I had me some Hennessy White because at 8 o'clock is dinner time for me. You
You
know what
know
I'm
what?
saying?
I'm
It's
not
late.
mad at it.
It's late. So when I woke up, needless to say, I was a little foggy. So now I went from Henny White to Bang. Not a good. I know it's not good.
Oh gosh, that would have me bouncing off the walls. I'd be
Yeah,
just shaking.
yeah. So I need. Yeah, I got a terrible diet these days, man. I'm just eating whatever, drinking whatever, and just floating along. It's COVID. You know,
It is.
I don't want to just blame it on COVID, but this last year has been like,
At this point, COVID comforts, I think, are something that we all have.
yeah.
So I wouldn't even follow anybody because, like, I've been sitting here eating donuts all week long just because it's my comfort thing. It's my only reason to leave the house is to go to Dunkin' Donuts.
And it's funny too because I work at a college campus, and we always talking to the kids about the freshman 15. When they come in that freshman year, be careful and that what's that COVID about? For me, it's about a COVID 30, man. I mean, I'm not even kidding. It's a solid 30 pounds. Just
COVID will do it to you.
mm,
The world is shut down. We don't really have anything to do. And
yeah. And I just came off of quarantine too because I was in contact with somebody. So
uh,
the CDC protocols are 10 days. Well, it was 14 days, but it then went down to 10 days, and I had to test twice while I was down, and I had to test, negative before I can come back to work. So I just finished doing that. Only the cool thing is they don't take your sick days from you. You know what I'm saying? They give you those days off.
okay. See, that's good. I don't know about that for my job. I think we're still covered under that if we get COVID, but since we're working in a health clinic, there's kind of this expected hey, you're probably going to get infected at some point.
Right.
So we've gotten vaccinated, but at this point, it's still like figure it out as we go.
So now I didn't schedule my vaccination because I'm essentially a first responder too. But there's this weird thing where it ended up in the junk mail, and I just delete my junk mail. The thing for the CDC ended up in the junk mail, so I didn't fill it out. And then right when I was asking one of my supervisors. I ended up with an exposure, so I had to go out. But what is your experience with that with the vaccine? Which one are you taking
So
first of all?
I got the Moderna vaccine.
Okay.
The first shot I got not February, January 2nd. And oh my God, first of all, the shot itself was painless.
Okay.
I couldn't even tell that it had been done. So the nurse who gave me the shot, she's like, "Oh, I'm all finished." And I'm literally thinking like I would have at least felt a pinch. I felt absolutely nothing. About 6 hours after that, my arm was really sore. It swelled a little bit, got hot to the touch. I could feel it was warmer than the rest of my arm, but it still wasn't terrible. When I woke up the next day, it kind of felt like somebody nailed a nail in my arm with a hammer. It hurt.
Now,
Like it was probably the worst arm pain I've ever had in my life.
so now before that, were you like any kind of conspiracy theories creeped in your head, or you went into a solid like it is? Well, I'm taking it.
So for me, and there's two ways I look at it. The first way, of all the things that I have randomly put in my body, I love like street food. I have eaten things from random people on the beach and just anything else. I'm like, you know what? This ain't gonna hurt me. At least I know this is coming from a lab,
Right.
so it might be sterile,
Right.
at least.
Right.
The other side of it, I thought about the conspiracy theory side of it because I used to be an avid conspiracy person, and it was things that I was looking into about vaccines, vaccinations, and all that. I never went the anti-vax route,
Right.
but looking at medical history for Black people, I was like, I'm not too thrilled right at first. So I had the chance to watch people who got the vaccine first
Right.
and monitor them through clinical studies. And I felt a little more at ease. And I was like, you know what? I got a mom who's sick with cancer. I want to be able to go see my family, take care of them, and not put them at a greater risk,
Yeah.
even though I know I work in healthcare. So I'm already at a top risk right away. I'm just going to do it.
Now,
And so
what about after that day when when you started feeling that pain? Any of that shit creep back in your mind?
some of it creeped back in my mind right away. And I had to check myself. I'm
Uh,
like, what if they put like a tracking device in my arm and that's why it hurts so bad? And then I'm like, Andrew, you saw the vaccine. There was nothing in this thing.
Bill Gates was in there, you know, Bill Gates and all that crazy. Well, let me not say crazy because I don't know what's going on, but
For me, and this is probably going to sound out the box, I actually would not be scared, offended, or even upset if there was some kind of biological and engineering form to it to change the human body.
right.
But I would like to be told.
Correct.
That's the thing. I don't care about enhancing the body with cybernetics if that would be where humanity would go. Make me into a robot.
Right.
I actually would be thrilled about that. But tell me what you're doing.
Yeah.
Don't just do it.
You know
If that was
no, the government ain't telling you that. They gonna, you know, they gonna just, you know, to give Tuskegee us and you know, but stuff like that. Yeah. So I thought about it, but I'm in such close contact working on a college campus. I mean, we respond to everything from, you know, assaults to, you know, just a common cold or just a domestic dispute, or
right.
so we're always in close contact. So I'm just like, you know what, let me get this shot because they don't make you get it. The college doesn't make you get it. They like, you know, they make it available for you if you want it, and you are a first responder, so you're going to be able to get it in the beginning when they roll the vaccines out. So I thought about it a little bit crazy, but then everybody, you know, my coworkers are getting it, and you know, so I wanted to see if your symptoms was kind of similar to those. I was hearing that the second one was the worst one.
Yes.
Okay.
The second shot I got, oh yeah, it was actually this week. It was Tuesday of this week that I got it, February 2nd. That's when I got my second shot. The day of the shot, again, I felt nothing. Like, I felt perfectly fine. Couldn't feel the needle even break my skin. I got home, went through the rest of my day with no issue. I went to sleep about 4 a.m. I woke up because I just felt pain. Like all my joints in my body were hurting. My whole body was just in pain. I had chills. I was hot, but cold sweat, and I couldn't sleep. So I just was walking around my apartment trying to walk it off, thought it would get better. It did not get better. My symptoms got worse as the day progressed. Like I had to call in from work. I couldn't even leave my house to go to the office.
Right.
The pain got worse. I had a low temperature of 100 degrees that lasted for about 7 to 8 hours throughout the day.
Right.
And then I was just exhausted. Like I felt like I hadn't run miles and I was sleeping on my couch. Even sleeping, I felt like I was still working. And that lasted until, I want to say about midnight when I actually started to feel better.
Yeah. So, okay. So, and nothing after that. That was February. So, a couple of days and you're good from there.
Yeah, nothing after that. Now, today, I feel perfectly fine.
Okay. So, I might have to speed up you know, when I got that 10-day break and I had to, you know, quarantine, started creeping in my head again. And I was like, I got to ask some more people. Let me just ask a couple more people, see how they doing. And, you know, I think, all right. I'm gonna press that button on the email and you know, forward my name and see what happens. I think I'll do it.
Get the best information you can
Yeah.
because even if you get one shot, the first shot provides 70% protection.
Okay.
And at least makes if you do get infected or exposed to the virus, your reaction won't be as severe.
Right.
So even if some people have gotten the first one and they're just like, you know what, I'm not getting the second shot, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. You know, because this is crazy. I haven't. My mother was sick with it in the beginning, like last March when it was like crazy where the hospital was shut down. She was in the hospital for 17 days, and you know, just since then she's not. You just know you can't be around her without a mask. It's just a crazy. There's no more hugging and kissing and all of that. She's just not like, she does not want any of us to get it, and she doesn't want to get it again, or you know. So it's just crazy that, you know, not even to be able to I'm hug and kiss my mother every time I see her. And it's a whole different thing. So that's what made me start thinking about, get vaccinated. So everybody's, because when everything gets better, then we can get back to some semblance of normal life. I'm hoping.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I want to get back to that.
Right. Why'd you take Moderna, not the, or just because it was the first one they rolled out?
So it was the first one that they rolled out for our clinic. What was it? Is it Johnson & Johnson or
and Pfizer?
The first one. Pfizer.
Pfizer. Okay.
Pfizer did the first vaccine, and I don't think that got shipped to upstate New York clinics, at least that I know of. I think we got more of the Moderna up north before the Pfizer made it to clinics here.
Okay. And you, speaking of upstate, what's going on with the police up there pepper spraying? what is going? I mean, sometimes I have to be careful because I look at stuff and sometimes it's just clickbait, right? Somebody will put some shit there and you're like, oh, what is this? And it's like, that's not even. This was really, as somebody who carries pepper spray on the job, I know that when you go for the training, you have to get sprayed. Mm-hmm. You get sprayed, but it's a controlled environment. You get sprayed. They take the baby shampoo or saline solution to wipe it out of your eyes, or some people say milk, but under the training, they tell you they're going to spray you. They spray you. They walk you over to the bucket, soap, rinse you out, and the worst pain about it was getting out of your eyes. I couldn't see for it took 11 minutes for me to be able to clear my eyes. Mm-hmm. And I remember after that, I was saying, I never want to have to use this. I don't think I would ever want to do this to anybody. So I spend most of my time, 99.999% of my time, lecturing people to death in situations. So I've been involved in, mental health breakdowns and all-out brawls, alcohol-induced, drug-induced, and I just can't. I don't understand what that is.
I want to try to put some kind of rationality to it, but as bad as I try, I can't. Here in Rochester specifically, I have experienced myself being profiled by police. I've been followed. I haven't been physically assaulted to the point where it's an attack on me, but I've definitely not been treated kindly by the police here. And it just doesn't stop. When we were out protesting once the Daniel Prue video came out, the protest that we were a part of, that we went, it was all peaceful for us. But as soon as a large group of Black people started gathering, the police presence went from 0 to 100, with people mocking us from the roof, looking down at us. And these are police officers who are instigating for violence to start. And then once it all started, it was 0 to 100. It's if you don't comply and listen with the police here, you're going to get pepper sprayed, assaulted, and arrested.
Right.
That's what's going to happen. And even in my experience working in public safety, I was a parking enforcement officer, meter maid, some people call them. Yep. I was out there doing it, and a police officer who was on duty stopped me as I was writing a ticket downtown in an area that had to have more white people than Black people, because it was the downtown. It was more of an expensive area to live in. I'm writing parking tickets. He stops me, starts shouting at me what are you doing? Go to the ghetto where they don't pay taxes and write tickets for Black people who look like you.
Wow.
And I'm and this is an uniformed police officer saying this to me. And I'm okay, this is just weird. And I'm 20 years old at the time. This is my real first experience having somebody say something so overtly racist to me, who's supposed to be working with me as a part of the same team.
Yeah.
And then that's when it really struck me. I'm this isn't it. This is not what I thought America and what upstate New York is. Yeah. You always think it's safer here because you're upstate. People are more open-minded.
Right.
The racism's just hidden under the uniform.
Yeah,
That's it.
and like I think people don't look at the like the emotional aspect of what you went through. So like, well, they didn't hit you, then it's like that's the threshold of if it's wrong, and even then, well, what did you say? Or what did you do? Or what was you wearing? Like those type of things. But people underestimate how you feel walking away from that situation, and how that affects your next interaction with. And I, the same thing for me. But I had while I'm working, I had a kid just straight up called me a nigger on the college campus. He said it. I want to say he called. It was me and two other black officers and
Hmm.
a young freshman kid, and he said it about 35, 40 times. I mean, the dude, he was just, and that, at the time, this was in, I want to say 2003. So, people think about stuff like that and they think, oh, that really doesn't happen. That's from years ago, kind of like get over it, which, why y'all acting crazy or whatever. But
Hmm.
I remember because I had a separate life when I was a teenager. That took me back. I wanted to punch the clock, go home, put on my all black, and come back and see this dude. Like that's where I was going. And because I couldn't, I remember like having to go have a moment like in my patrol car, like crying because I couldn't physically do what I wanted to do to this guy. And I was thinking at that point, I'm like thinking about my family and like, all right, just make a better decision. Because before, maybe about 3 years before that, I I actually lost the job because I let somebody get under my skin, and I was I was that kind of guy where if you say something, you say the wrong thing to me, and we gonna fight. And I actually lost the job from it. So to actually have that happen, that stuff stays with you.
It does.
And
It
that's
really does.
yeah. So you mentioned when you guys were doing the protest. How do you find the not your role, but how do you find the protest and in your activism?
For me, my activism is, and I feel weird saying that I'm an activist because I never want to take on a title that I feel is bigger than me. I'm just a person who I'm tired of seeing this happen to people that I care about and people who look like me. So I'm just putting myself out there as another body. And the more support there is, the harder it is to deny there's an issue, which means change has to come.
Right.
So when I first found out about the protests that were going to start happening here in upstate, I found that out through Facebook, and that was like my initial connection. But as far as working with the NAACP Black movements, I've been doing that with my mom since I was young.
Okay.
So my mom, she was already a part of an activism group. She did a lot of work at the NAACP, and she now works with New York State teachers unions. And she was always the contact or the person that I could look at to say, like, okay, this is how I get involved in a social justice issue that I want to be a part of. And so then once I found the connection here and we started with our protest for Black Lives Matter, I was like, look, I'm going to show up and I will find a spot to be in and figure out how I can contribute. As I think sometimes when I've been asked or people ask me, how do you get into a protest? It's not about going in with a predefined role of what you're going to do. Sometimes it's you just show up, you make the connections, and you figure out how you can help.
Right. And I would say don't be afraid of the well, let me just first say I don't I don't protest anything. I don't do anything. I, I if I could if I never had to do anything violent or see anything violent or anything like that again in my life, I want to say I'm from that standpoint where I'm just, I just want to be a good, productive citizen and kind of go about my business. I know it's kind of hard not to like, pick a side at this point because there's so much going on. But but even though from that standpoint, I'm more of a sideline, observer, I still would say don't, shortchange it, what you're doing. Don't feel like it's bigger because, there are people that take up arms. There are people that, write legislation. There are people that's going to do the movement throughout the protests. People are going to organize. And the fact of the matter is you're doing something that, I never done. You're part of an organization, or you've been part of organizing from a young age. How old would you say you started?
Uh, the first time I went to like a protest, I remember this was in Alabama and I was 7 years old.
So you, Alabama, that's, when you think of protests,
Oh,
that's what
yeah.
you're talking about. All right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm thinking about. I remember, I want to say it was to commemorate. Was it to commemorate the Million Man March? And it was like a special event that they had put together, and my mom took me and my brother to. And that was the first thing I ever went to. I remember exactly because I wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich the entire time, and nobody had any. They only had ham and cheese. And I was so mad.
Yeah, that's funny. So I've been rocking with you for over a year. So I want to say in 2019, we're part of I think it was called. I'm in so many different podcast groups. It's like Black Podcasters. I think it was Black Podcasters.
I think it was Black Podcasters United.
Right, right. So what I used to do, I used to go in there and just because I didn't, I was new. I would go in there and just find a couple of people's podcasts and listen to it, and then like give my quick little review or whatever and put it in the thing. It seemed like a lot of people are in there just to kind of see if they can get some subscribers or listeners. So I used to. So yours was one of the ones I came across, and I'm because I spent a lot of my life, a lot of my younger years, being a follower and not really thinking for myself. Easy to sway me. I seem like I gravitate towards people who are doing things in a brave way that, speak that voice that, if I could step outside of myself and do something that somebody's doing, it would be in that vein where you're like, all right, this is who I am. I'm gonna let you know, and I'm gonna do it boldly. So your podcast was probably one of the first ones I listened to. And my intention was to listen to one episode of, I took like 5 people. I was like, all right, I'm going to listen to one episode of each person. And I just found myself, going through your catalog a bit because of that transparency. So that's what, got me listening to you. One listen. It's and it seemed like, is it script? This stuff, it seems like you're well thought out. You mix in a little bit of humor, self-deprecating humor. You take yourself serious. You can see you take yourself serious, but it's also done in a way that, when, just in a way that you feel comfortable, and I felt like next thing you know, I was like 3 or 4 episodes in. So do you script that?
No, I don't script my show. What I do is I have like a layout in my head of everything that I've experienced throughout the week. And anything that I talk about on my podcast is specifically the emotion that it generated. And for some reason, there's a reason why I'm talking about it. And since I don't get to talk about these things throughout the day, it's just like, here's my thoughts that are in my head. And the first episode, I remember I tried to write out, plan, script everything I was going to say. And then I remember I listened to it and I found myself editing it almost about 94 times.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't like how this sounds. And I'm like, this doesn't sound like me. So I went back to edit it again. And then I ended up deleting all the audio. And I was like, oh, crap, what do I do? And I had set a deadline for myself and everything. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to hit record and start talking, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
And then it worked.
Okay. So now when you say you set a deadline, you've been telling people like, hey, my podcast is coming out, like that type of thing?
Mm-hmm. I set a deadline for myself because I remember I was like, I'm going to start planning in February. My first episode, I think, was March 6th. And I was like, I want to meet this deadline specifically because I've said this is what I'm going to do to myself. And then I thought about the other people. I'm like, yeah, it's great that I said it to him too, but if I don't follow through with this one moment that I say I've been wanting to do,
Right.
then I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
It was interesting. My podcast, I just look at it as it's just me talking in the mirror to myself, and if there's a message there, I hope that it's received.
Any fear, like, because you are very transparent with your podcast, and the first people we tell are people that's close to us that hey man, I'm gonna be doing that. But I don't think I told anybody. I be honest with you, I didn't. I just popped it out, and people were like, "Oh, I didn't at this point, I didn't even think you talk much." So you going into that, and maybe first, because the name is bold, Lifestyles of Gay Black Boy is bold. So right off the bat, sort of what you're getting. So I guess that would cut out some of the angst over, trying to talk to people about what you're going to talk about, because now you know what you're getting into. But what about the content and worrying about what you're going to be revealing as far as your listeners?
That was never a fear for me. Fear, there's only a few things in this life that I really fear.
Okay.
And they're so grand that there's no way anyone could affect what they could do it to us in our life. Okay. I fear black holes. I fear time stopping, which I don't think time will ever stop, and I hope it doesn't. Right. Those are the things that I'm afraid of. When it came to things about me, I used to be afraid of a lot of things in my life when I was younger for myself, because I didn't know that I had the power to protect myself right. all this time. Right. And that was me just believing in myself. So when it comes to talking about my life and how transparent I am, the reason why I have no fear doing it is because since it happened to me, that means I have the power to speak about it. Right. I have all of the power. And fear for me is fear of something that is powerful, more powerful than me. And in this case, I have all the power. So right. It doesn't scare me.
So the two things I wanted to talk to you about today, well, three, because I want to talk a little bit about activism, but the fact that you are a gay black male, and I wanted to kind of touch on that, growing up. The 2 episodes, we don't have to go through them, word for word, but the 2 episodes that struck me was Gay, Black, and Out. So that talked about you coming out. So I wanted to touch on that for you. We grew up in the same kind of community, so we know that we know the stigma attached to it, to being gay, wherever you go, especially with kids. Kids generally don't know any better, and we just go off of what other people told us. So as far as the coming out, I know the story because I listened to your podcast, but just touch on that a little bit.
So for me, coming out, it was an experience all in itself. As far as my community of people around me, and this is going to exclude my family, that was essentially torture for me. Being a gay black kid was not easy, especially the fact that I grew up on military bases, which is like the pinnacle of hypermasculinity. Right. Then the other side of that, I'm going to schools that are on military bases. So these are going to be children who are influenced by that hypermasculinity they see from their fathers and the other men who are in the military, right. Passed down to them. And it all goes to a school where there's no control of people who can't control that cortex of their mind to stop all this bullying and aggression to somebody who's different. So it just hurt. Every day was torment for me. From the moment that I woke up to the moment that I went to bed, it was torment. And now tying that in with my family, at that point, because my family was in that state of mind of gay is wrong, you can't do this, you can't be this, whatever. My parents did the best that they could, but the best still hurt. Right. I do believe that there is parental trauma and generational trauma that can come even when our parents mean the best for us. They want us to have a good life. They don't want us to be hurt. But when you're a child who is constantly being bullied in school, and the one place that you could have as a safe haven should be home, but you're receiving the same kind of energy at home, it doesn't work.
No.
So it's only painful. And then for me, coming out wasn't much of a coming out for me, unfortunately. I was more kind of punched in the face and then kicked out of the closet and told, hey, you better tap dance as gay right now, because at this point, the only thing you can say is you're Black and you're still a guy.
Right.
And that was it. And at that point, I just knew what I had to do. My dad caught me on the chat line talking to men. So I was like, well, I'm out in at that point. But then the big outing came when they found out I was HIV positive.
Okay.
And there was not much else to hide at that point.
Right.
So once I'm out in the open, I just had to either live in my truth, or at the other end of the spectrum was give up.
Right.
And I'm not a person who's going to give up.
Now, did you have to, was it just for you, because it's important, your support system and your family accepting you, did you have to do any external like therapy and stuff like that?
I never went to therapy even after finding out I was positive and being outed to my family. I never actually went to therapy for that in the immediate years that followed. After finding out my diagnosis of being positive and then dealing with the actual fracture that it created in my family with me officially being gay, and I'll say it in air quotes, like it's official
Right.
that he's gay, we kind of had to find a balance, how to get back to pretending that there wasn't a problem before we could start fixing the problem.
Right.
And once we got there, that was me moving out and starting my adult life and then saying, hey, now that we have space, let's come to an understanding here of how we're supposed to live.
Right. You feel like, because you said like, pretend like, there wasn't a problem. You feel like the responsibility is on you to pretend like, because you are who you are. Do you feel like that was more on the people who had a problem with it to have to get over it? Or did you feel like you wanted to meet people where they were? Because, I know a lot can be involved as far as when you emotionally get hurt by people you love. Did you feel like you were going to meet them halfway with that?
When I was younger, I felt that I had to meet them halfway because I felt that I was wrong. And I felt that I caused all these problems and that I hurt people. I took in all this personal blame in the beginning of, I need to extend the olive branch, so I need to pretend that everything is okay to make you feel comfortable enough to talk to me. And that was the point where I didn't understand standing on my own 2 feet and saying, I'm still an adult, no matter how you feel about me or look at me. I'm an adult, I'm a human, and you can't treat me this way.
Right.
And it wasn't until I made that transition later on in my life to say, I don't care. I do not care what any person in this world thinks about me. And the reason why I don't care is because at the end of the day, when I'm sitting in my apartment by myself, the first person that I'm going to think of when I have an issue is going to be Andrew. How do we get out of this?
Right.
Now, who can I call?
Right.
So,
yeah. So growing, for me, I'm 47, so I'm a little bit older than you. But I remember, having biases growing up, and a lot of it came from, I don't think inside of my house, it wasn't anything like that, but outside, from the older guys out there, they made it clear. It's like it was just wrong to be gay, church folk for sure, they made it clear, and so, I grew up thinking that it was wrong, and I had this image in my head of what somebody gay was, that the stereotypical flamboyant, and once it was a friend of mine who, hard body dude who was, in and out of jail or whatever, and somebody mentioned to me like, somebody said to me that, he was gay, and I was like, "What, man? That dude ain't." And I listed all the stereotypes, like he don't. Da, 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 da. And then once it came out that he was, then I had to rethink that. Okay, so it's not what I initially thought. And from there, part of my transition as far as in thinking in general, from there was like, all right, so now I know that I've had plenty of conversations with this person, been around this person. It's just a regular dude. So I had to confront my own, biases and look at myself. And the one thing that I've always done is no matter what I've done in public, I've always, when I'm, when you're alone with yourself, that's when that real work happens and you can't hide from yourself. So I'm, had to start questioning myself. And I think if people are being honest and they can honestly, take a step back and just reflect on the things that they do and they say, I think, we'll be better for it. And then, it became more not like I was an advocate, but more like if somebody was saying something slick, I kind of pushed back a little bit. And it's weird to see people get offended when you push back. So this whole like now it's like this fight against, people feel like we're being too politically correct and PC and stuff like that. For me, that's code word for I want to say what I want to say to you and not be held accountable. So what about learning that you were HIV positive? Just walk us through that.
Learning I was HIV positive, it was a life-changing experience for me. It's one that I hope most people will never go through, even though I know a large population of the earth is infected with HIV at this point. But I found out when I was 16 years old. At the time, I was in high school. It was my senior year of high school. And I was running for student body president. It was my junior year of high school. We were running student body president for next year's president, which I would have been a senior at that point. We did a blood drive through the Red Cross, and everybody who was going to be a presidential candidate did it as like a little public publicity thing to say, hey, we're doing this. You should do it too. I gave my donation. Everything was fine for about 2-3 weeks. And then a letter came to my house, still living with my parents at the time. And on the letter, it just simply said, hey, there's an issue with your donation. Please give us a call at the Red Cross here to schedule a conversation about your donation. And then it listed below, here are some possibilities of things that could happen with your donation to cause a reason for us to have a counseling session with you. So I call a number and some lady answers the phone. And I'm like, hey, I got this letter. I need to talk with you. She's like, well, let's talk tomorrow. We really need to have this conversation in person. Let's meet at the Red Cross by your school at 10 a.m. So I'm like, okay, perfectly fine. I'll meet you there. Before she hangs up the phone, I asked her, is it HIV? And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't say anything about that over the phone. And so I'm like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. We hang up the phone. The entire night I'm panicking. My parents don't know I've gotten this letter. I haven't told them. My brother doesn't know. I'm trying to exist in the house just as regular old Andrew, not saying a single word about the letter that I just read and that I've been reading 12 different times since I've gotten it. So I go to school the next day, finish band practice, head to the Red Cross. As soon as I get in there, I see these 2 women at the front desk. They're like, hi, Andrew, come to this room with us. So we go to a room, and the one woman, she was a Black woman. I want to say she was middle age. I'm going to put it in middle age as like 40 to 50 is like middle age for me, at least.
No, that's very young, but go ahead.
Yes, that's what I was saying. It's very young. But she looks at me and she's like, yeah, it's HIV. And she says it like that, which made me think now that I'm older, she thought I knew that I was positive.
Right.
She had no idea that I didn't know that was positive because I immediately broke down. I'm crying in the room. And she just, she reached over and she hugs me. She sees I'm trying to leave. And I'm so thankful for her hugging me that day. She stopped me from leaving and kept me there. And we're talking in this big, dark conference room. I remember the room, I just felt so alone and so empty at that moment. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't even speak. I just was crying hysterically. And they finally started talking to me, and she's like, it's going to be okay. There's treatment. There's all these things now. And I'm like, I'm going to die. And she's like, no, people who have HIV live very long lives, like 30, 40, 50 years. And I screamed at her, I don't want fucking 30 years. That's not what I want in my life. I want to live. And, you know, now I know there's a whole different life that's out there.
Right.
But all I had was the immediate fear that's been ingrained in my head as a Black child coming from a Black family that is deeply involved in church, was that if you're gay, you get HIV, you die.
Right.
You go to hell, and that's it.
Right.
And I'm like, so this is what it is. This is what's going to happen to me. And not only did I feel immediate self-hate, I felt nothing at the same time. And it was a miracle that day. And I say a miracle because they tried to get in contact with my mom and dad, couldn't reach them. The only person they could get was my school counselor. Her name was Miss Mendocino. And she came running over to the Red Cross. And I don't even know why. I was getting emotional when I think about it. I'm getting emotional now. I heard her squeaky rain boots. I heard her boots. And I knew everything was going to be okay. And we went from there. It was intense. But that was the moment in my life where everything changed. And I know some people say it and they look at it, they're like, your life changes, new year, new me. That was the moment in my life where it changed, a total 180 that I never expected.
Right. So, and was that person, was she instrumental in like helping you as far as, you know, letting your parents know or letting your family know?
Oh yeah. She stayed there with me for hours. I remember I left school at 10. I got home at 6 at night and had never gone back to school that day. And she never once left my side. She told my parents. She helped talk with me with my parents. And then she was just the staple for me for the rest of my high school career and even into my adult life. I don't know how I can even say it. If I think of angels on this earth for real, she was mine.
So how was the initial reaction, you know, at home for you?
My parents, they were in shock. My dad didn't really say much at all when we first found out, and then afterwards leaving, he and I had a conversation in the car. It's not a conversation I'll talk about, but it's one that it was something that I needed to have with my dad.
Right.
And then my mom, we kind of had a conversation too, to kind of figure out where we were. Then we ended up telling my brother the day afterwards, and he had a very visceral reaction to it. So he and we talked, and it brought us even closer as brothers. But it changed our entire family dynamic, where at that point I was still living at home, but I gave myself a clock that I got to get out of here because I love my family and I love my family. So I need to leave them and figure out who I am before I let this be damaged anymore.
Now, so your family is one thing, you know, and it seems like I said, like you had a pretty good support system, even, you know, people's reactions coming from an emotional standpoint because they love you. So how do you then navigate or go about, you know, being public? Because, you know, you don't have to, you don't have to reveal your status to anybody publicly. So how do you go about, you know, sharing this information with your friends, and also because it's you're not just sharing with them, you're also going to be educating them. Now you immediately become, you know, an educator about it because you're, you know. So how do you feel like you tackle that? How you move forward in that?
With that, in the beginning, once I got out of my family's house, started to really express my independence and stretch my wings and make friendships, it was something I never talked about. I never told anybody, at least for about the first 4 or 5 years, like until like I was about 25. I didn't say anything to anybody. And that was almost 9 years of knowing that I had the virus and then getting out of the house in that 5 year span when I was getting to know people. I thought I would immediately be judged. So I didn't say anything. And then living with roommates, other gay men, other gay Black men specifically, who we became brothers. It was great friendships that we had, but they didn't know how HIV worked or what HIV was about. So there were moments and times where they would make jokes or say things that were incredibly insensitive, but they had no clue.
Right.
They had no clue what they were saying because they didn't even know that the person sitting a foot away from them is HIV positive. And then there was one day where, I don't know if you remember it. This was, I want to say it was about 2009 or 2010. There was some man who went to a McDonald's and he put some of his blood into the ketchup dispenser, and people found out that this man was HIV positive and he was supposedly trying to infect people with his virus. And my friends at the time, they started bashing people who were HIV positive. Like, oh, they want to give you the virus. This is what they want to do because they know they're going to die. So they want other people to die. And they still had no clue about my status at that point.
Right.
And I had gone to great lengths to hide it from them because we would go get HIV tests together. But since I knew my status, I would always tell the person in the room, hey, just prick my finger and put a Band-Aid on, or just put a Band-Aid on and make it look like you test me because I already know that I'm positive. Now, this person that I had just met 3 minutes ago, I could immediately tell I'm positive, whatever.
Right.
People I'm sitting next to and living with couldn't say a word to them. And it was once I had that moment that I heard it, I was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm not going to sit here in silence and pretend like I'm not HIV positive. And now at that point, I didn't say anything to confront them in that conversation, but I no longer hid the fact that I was taking medication every day,
Right.
that I was going to my appointments, that I was protecting myself. I never hid that anymore. And then it clicked for them one day. Hey, you always say you're going to Strong Hospital, and then you always go and you get medications, but we never see you take the medications. What's that about? And then one of my friends asked, are you HIV positive? And I was like, yes, I am. And we had been friends at that point for 9 years, and I had never said a word to him. And at that point, I was like, I'm not hiding it from anybody, because if I keep hiding this, I'm only going to keep hurting myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So you feel like, that during that hiding, do you feel like it held you back from things? Like when you look back, you feel like it held you back from things that you either may have wanted to do, or in general, just from an emotional standpoint, like, having these secrets, having a secret that, and especially knowing that the group that you were around were super judgmental about it.
Oh yeah, it really limited my early on aspirations in life, because I didn't want people to know, and I was so afraid. I would limit the things that I would do. I wouldn't try to. I wanted to podcast when I was younger. I didn't start a podcast because I was like, well, if somebody finds out I'm HIV positive, then they try to use that against me. This is all going to be for nothing. And now I'm just going to have the biggest humiliation of my life.
Right, right.
And it scared the crap out of me. It really did.
So, okay. So going from being like afraid, and how do you then how are you able to then, just incorporate it and tell the world? Because, I'm sure, there's times when, I'll record something and somebody will either send me something, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know somebody in Ireland or something like that. You're essentially broadcasting to the world. How do you get comfortable in doing that? And because it's not like you got an avatar, you have your face, to people that know you or know your voice, but you have people can look you up on. Nowadays, somebody, you say a name, they're gonna look you up on Facebook. They're gonna find everything where you are, what you're doing, and also too, there may have been people that didn't know, but they know your family, so you have to worry about people reaching out to your family. With all that, knowing all of that, how do you then go from being afraid to saying, hey, it is what it is to everybody, not just your friends?
I was tired of crying while I was brushing my teeth every morning.
Mm.
I don't know why, but for me, from the day that I had found out that I was HIV positive, every day after that until I officially told somebody that I was positive, I cried brushing my teeth. I don't know why brushing my teeth was the trigger, but in the mirror every morning, I break down in tears because I felt like I was leaving my house living a lie every single day. And I just remember the first time that I told somebody that I was interested in and I wanted to date, this was the guy. I was like, hey, I'm HIV positive, so you know. We hadn't even held hands at that point. And this man lost it on me, flipped out on me, cursed me out up and down, created new curse words that I had never heard in my life. And I didn't know what to do. I'm just like, what? You say you like me, I like you, and we're supposed to have this connection. And this is how you respond when I just tell you something.
Right.
And I just was like, I can't feel this anymore. I can't. So if you're going to be in my space, you're going to know who I am from the moment that you walk around me. And I was just like, I don't care. Because when I step out my front door, it's just me. When I walk into my house, I can't see anything else that's happening out in that world, only the things that I have put around me. And I just feel like we built the space that we want to live in. And one of the things that I wanted to build was to say, I'm HIV positive. It is part of me, but it doesn't make me who I am. And then the other side of it, being so open about it on my podcast, I wish that when I was younger, I had somebody who looked like me, sounded like me, to just be honest. And I hope that my voice reaches people that way, of anybody who could even closely interact or end up where I've ended up at. Maybe this could be the voice to say, hey, maybe there's a different path out there. Or let me double think. Or if I did end up finding out I'm HIV positive, this isn't the end.
Right. What about as far as, like I say, you end up, you jump into being an educator as well. What about some of like misconceptions and things that maybe you had in the beginning that you corrected, and then as far as educating people, friends around you, because I'm pretty sure once you shared that, people had plenty of questions for you.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions that came for myself. One of the biggest things that I did not know was that you can't spread HIV by spitting on somebody. I have always thought, well, when I was younger, I had always thought you could just spit on somebody, boom, HIV.
Yeah.
Another thing, and this came from church, being involved with my family, there's a lot of information out there. There's a book series that was made by a doctor named Dr. Socarides, who it's been proven his things are not true, but we read this book about HIV being able to be spread through mosquito bites, which is not true. Another thing is that HIV, once you have it, you have the desire to give it to somebody else, which is also not true.
Wait. That was in his book?
I think that was a part of one of Dr. Socarides' books.
Like
there's a desire to spread the infection, because once you're infected, being a gay person, you no longer have the mindset of just a happy life for everybody. You want to bring everybody to you.
It's like some kind of vampire or some shit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. There were some crazy things that were out there. So I had this misinformation. And then a lot of my friends, the one things that they would ask me was, can we still share drinks? Can we still smoke a blunt together? All these things that were interactions that even myself, before I knew how HIV is transmitted, I thought if I drank off the glass of somebody who had HIV, I got it.
Right.
So it was ways and chances to educate them the same way I had to educate myself and my family.
Yeah. I don't even, I mean, I guess, at some point there's something I could look back in my life and think that something I believe that was, out there. It's just, I don't know. I find it, so that's the other thing too, because being active, I know you say you don't like to like use the word as an activist, but being out there, I find like it's almost like a separate, especially from, the Black community standpoint. It's almost like, you know, it's like a separate thing where I don't think people who are gay or LGBTQ plus, when you guys are being activists and you guys are saying Black Lives Matter, you're not separating yourself from that. But it seems like people want to separate even, your community from the activism. But I find that a lot of your community is on the front lines a lot of times before anybody else is. So how do you, when you going out there, you say you're going to be a body out there, but how do you even think about the fact that you're putting yourself out there for some people, not all, but there are some people that, wouldn't do that for you?
In the past, I think I would have felt like this isn't my fight. I'm walking away from this because these people wouldn't do this for me.
Right.
And I had a lot of resentment and anger and sometimes outright hatred for straight people. And I know it sounds weird to have that reverse mindset of things that you may hear, but there was this bitter animosity that used to be inside of me because all I could ever recall was people who identified as straight hurting me.
Right.
But then I had to look at it in this community where there are clear divisions, me being Black, gay, and openly gay. A lot of Black people look at me like, are you serious? Like, in a protest realm, sometimes we're there to be seen, not heard.
Right.
And in the protest for Black Lives Matter, like you said, you see a lot of people in the queer community, LGBTQ plus, are out there on the front lines because we know if the Black race is being treated in a way where we're being killed, hurt, maimed, assaulted, and lynched in the streets, we are on the lower part of the totem pole of the Black community. So it's going to affect us even worse because when it happens to us, a majority of the community is not going to care because they will look at it as, well, they're gay, they deserved it.
Right.
If you look at Black trans women in particular, Black trans women are still being killed at an alarming rate, much higher than their cisgender counterpart or Black cisgendered men in general. And they're being killed. They're not being noticed. They're not being reported. And when their deaths are reported, they're being silenced. Right. And this is coming from our own inner community. To say that, and I say it all together, if we're being treated by the person who oppresses us, who has oppressed us or is oppressing us, which in this line of thinking for me is the police, they're treating us like crap and they're doing this to the Black people who have privilege in our society to interact. What about the people who don't have that privilege?
Correct.
So we don't have the chance to sit back and be quiet and say, well, you know what? It's happening to all the Black people, so it's not really going to be different for us. It is going to be worse. So if we don't start speaking up for ourselves, it's not going to happen.
Right. I was looking at FBI statistics from 2019. And when it comes to hate crime, that's race-based, 48% are against anti-Black or the anti-African American. And then when it comes to sexual orientation crimes, hate crimes, 62% reported offenses. Now, keep in mind these are reported because a lot of stuff just involve anti-gay bias against males. So, you being a Black male, statistically, you have a reason to really, really want to fight. But I don't know if people realize, you know, you putting yourself on the line, how, like you said, you're lower on the totem pole, lower on the rung as far as, what people going to really, not that you want people to feel sorry, but you want empathy and you want people to just treat you fair. But as far as hate crimes, you are, statistically, you are really high risk. And, so to be able to put yourself out there at that high risk, and that's aside from the protesting. This has nothing to do with police brutality, which you were protesting. This is just everyday life. So it's definitely commendable in my eyes. So now you marched on DC.
Yes, I went to the march.
Not the not the capital thing. You went to the other.
Oh no.
Not that one. You went to the other one that wasn't that one. How did you find that?
So I got connected with that through Facebook, and then my mom had contacted the NAACP, who then they linked me with more people who were going to be there at the protest. So I found out about it. I want to say it was about 6 months before it happened in August. It was late February, I want to say. And when I found out about that, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, I am going. I want my voice there. I want my body there. I want to be a part of this no matter what it takes to get there. And I got one of my other friends. He came down with me and we went to the protest and it was amazing.
So that's the other thing too. With social media is such a good tool now. You can organize the organization that's going on with social media. And how did you get down there?
So I drove down there, just rented a car, drove down, and I got a hotel that was in Virginia. So that way we could be on the outskirts of DC. Because I had this fear. I always have this fear that when we go to a protest or something, we're going to have the counter protest there that's coming violently. And I'm like, oh, this is the one.
Right. Did your job, not dissuade, but like against, dissuade you guys from doing protesting or, kind of remind you, like, you still are representing us. Like they don't want to see you on CNN or whatever, smacking somebody or something, doing something crazy. Did you tell your job that you were going, or you just said, hey, I'm going and whatever happens, happens?
I just was like, I'm going. I don't care. Some people from my job ended up finding out that I was there. And then they apparently talked about it in a meeting, not in a bad way. I don't know the full context, but they told like the leadership team that I was there. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got down to DC in the protest, I was standing in the reflection pool in front of the Lincoln Monument in a bright green shirt. You can see me clearly on, like, I'm on news broadcast and everything everywhere. I'm like, if they're going to fire me, today's the day. So.
Did you wear the bright green shirt on purpose?
So I wore the bright green shirt on purpose because it was a shirt about supporting Black businesses, and it was Black Pride is the Black dollar. Mm. So encouraging spending in Black businesses, and it was lime green. And I'm like, this is what I want people to see. So I was okay with it, but I did not think when I got there, I did not see myself walking into the reflection pool to make sure that I could be there and have space to socially distance, but then also be a part of the image that we're here. Mm. We are here. It doesn't matter what's in front of us. We are going to stand here and you can't move us.
Right. So now the protesting that you did in Rochester, do you feel like there's some movement in your local government or the police department? Is there continual dialogue, you feel like?
There is continuing dialogue. Even with the case that came out with the young girl who was pepper sprayed, There is the Police Accountability Board that has been working diligently to get information out to the public, to inform people, so that when more voting processes come up, when we have different interdepartmental elections, when we have people in our seats here of power, we know who they are, how to talk to them, how to get in contact with them, how to protest effectively, so that way change can be made. One of the things here now, all of our police records, especially when it comes to conduct, whether it's good or bad, is made publicly available. And that started at the beginning of this year. And it was just such a great thing to see. And now it's just going further. One of the board members, her name is Shawnee Wilson. She does amazing work to get information out to the public, where we get these documents released. It's hard to compile the information, but they put it out there so the information is there readily available, and you can read it, see it yourself, or also get their information. Another thing that's also happened, it's woken up a lot of people to see the businesses in our city that have supported the, I can't even call it an anti-protest, the movement that says Black Lives Matter is meant for terrorism and disruption. The businesses here that used to support that, they've either stopped because we finally called them out on it, or they have gone out of business. And it's working to change the environment around here.
All right. So as far as support for people who are HIV positive, and especially for information purposes, you have anybody or any groups that locally and or nationally that people can reach out to?
So locally, if you are in the upstate New York area, one of the easiest ways to get information for HIV treatment, prevention, and awareness is to go to trilliumhealth.org. Or if you don't go to Trillium, which Trillium is TRILLIUM health.org, you can also look at prepconnect.org. PrEP Connect, if you're not familiar with PrEP is the medication that is meant to prevent HIV for people who are negative right now, but they also have a connection for people who are positive and who are looking for treatment. And that it is nationwide. I am more familiar with the local branches that they use through PrEP Connect to connect you if you live in New York State. Nationwide, HIV.gov is, I'm going to honestly say, is one of the most trusted sources of information that I have seen out. This is directly from the government, and it's in connection with the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control. And they present tons of information that you can access online that has full information about HIV, how it works. If you think you're HIV positive, how to get tested. You can order home testing supplies. If you have HIV, you need to get connected with treatment. They have a national provider index right on the website where you can put in your information, even just your zip code, and find providers in your area that you can go to get treatment, to get tested, to prevent HIV if you think you may be exposed. With bullying, I don't have too many bullying connects. One of the biggest ones that I do know of when it comes to bullying is through Facebook. There is a anti-bullying coalition. That is a tongue twister. They have different connect resources through schools, outside school resources. I know there's churches and even a few government entities to get kids, adults, or anybody who's dealing with a bullying, assault, or abuse. And it's all great resources. That's all I got.
All right. So where can we find you? Social media, podcasts, all the good stuff.
So you can find me on all social media platforms as AJ Vandertunt. That is my last name. It is not my real last name, but that's the way you search for me. I'm the only Vandertunt on all social media that I've seen. Other than that, if you just look for a lifestyle of a gay Black boy, on all social media platforms. You will find me the same way there. If you want to reach out to me by email, my email address is lifestylegbb@gmail.com. And then to listen to my podcast, I am on Apple Music, Anchor, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and then I just got onto Amazon. Feel free to listen. I don't know what to say about my show other than that it's just me talking shit into a microphone.
Yep.
And I don't know what to do.
Hey, so you have like a studio setup?
So I'm working out of my apartment, and this little nook of my apartment is like my recording area. I'm working with 600 square feet, and it's been working pretty well.
Yeah.
So I like it so far.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, a nice enclosed. This room is upstairs, and I'm trying to, so like, because I do all I'm on a couple of accountability groups and stuff like that. So we do our Zoom calls and the Skype calls. I do them from here. It's not really sound. The sound quality is not good here, and I'm still learning. To be honest with you, I'm still learning about how the sound quality and the record and editing. So you work with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And the first thing I recorded was literally into my phone anyway. So
Gotcha. See, I using my phone in the beginning, it worked really well, and then I got a microphone, and then I figured out setting up my apartment with massive amounts of pillows, the floor side.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. For sure. That I mean, if nothing else, because you know that you want to muffle that sound. So, all right. Thank you for hanging out with me. It's been a long time coming for me. I don't think you know that, but I've been plotting this for quite some time. So I appreciate you giving me time.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for having me. I listen to your podcast, and I've listened to you because you have a point of view of someone that I've never had before in my life, of a man who's been through experiences, who is not a part of the queer community, but isn't someone who immediately has disregarded me or just thought, whatever, not for me.
Right.
And it's been nice to know that we could build a connection this way. So I'm so happy that you had me on.
Oh, for sure, man. I'm humanity, man. You know, we got to, all this other stuff to me don't matter. You know what I'm saying? If somebody reaches across the table to me and, and they're kind and they're well-meaning, I'm near. So, and so far, like I said, that's worked for me in this iteration of my life. The stuff that I was doing, bottom line, wasn't working for me. And I feel like, things have worked out better for me being able to look at people as each individual as a person. I don't group people. I don't lump people together. And I just want to create some goodwill